All right, Adam, we are approaching the midway point of spring ball. This is practice 6 out of 15, and we got to actually watch today, and second time we've been able to watch, and so got to thank Coach Prime for letting us in here on Wednesdays, and for me, kind of the same impressions as the last time. I mean, this is a fast-moving practice, and Travis Hunter is really good. Jimmy Horn's really good. Shedeur Sanders throws a pretty good ball. What were some of your impressions today?
Yeah, there's a pretty clear efficiency in which the first-team offense has that, and don't get me wrong, the first-team offense is far from a well-oiled machine at this point, but you can just tell the execution level is a little bit higher on that side of the ball, and they've got a veteran quarterback there. And there was a beautiful play today where things broke down, and Shedeur Sanders got outside the pocket and found Montana Lomonius Craig downfield for a first down. Really nice throw and catch. It just was, not to be over dramatic, but they just haven't had that guy at that position to make plays like that on a consistent basis. So it is fun coming out here just as a fan of the game of football to see that position being played at a higher level. And you mentioned Jimmy Horn, the first Buff to earn his number 5 out there today. That was the first impression that we had was, okay, they're starting to earn them a little bit. We'll see how quickly that process gets accelerated. Now, it creates some fun storylines like who's going to be next, you don't rule out anybody. I was joking that, hey, maybe Charlie Offerdahl will be the next Buff to earn his number. You don't know how this process is going forward. Right. Even Dylan Edwards was asked about it. He says, I don't know. You come out every day trying to earn your number, and at some point you'll get that number. So we'll see. I would imagine by the time ESPN rolls into town, though, that you would think that there's going to be numbers on pretty much every jersey at that point, because it is still hard to pick out guys that are standing out in practice. There were a couple defensive plays today that were made, and it was on the other side of the field, and you just couldn't tell. There was a couple body types that might be like, so that part of it's hard to cover from an open practice standpoint. But there were some returning guys today, Brian, that stood out. Anthony Hankerson had a couple nice runs in there. Simeon Harris, a beautiful pass breakup. He's been playing nickelback. He's a guy that folks might forget about, that he was thrown into a really tough situation last year. Is a guy that to keep an eye on going forward. And another guy, Jake Wiley, got work with the first-team offensive line. So some returning guys making some moves out here this spring. Yeah,
we saw Travis Gray playing some left tackle as well. I think with the second unit, but he was at left tackle, Savion Washington at right tackle. So some of those returning guys getting noticed. It took 6 practices to get a number. If it takes every 6 practices, it's going to be a long time before everybody gets a number. I imagine that's going to be accelerated, don't you think?
Yeah, I don't think ESPN's going to want the nightmare that we've had here. Right. And don't get me wrong, we're very excited to be in here watching practice. That's not a complaint. It's just hard to pick out who's doing who. Taylor Upshaw was another guy on defense that made a play on defense today. So, I wish I could give those guys credit is what I want to do.
Yeah. I saw Shane Cokes make a few plays as well, and he's was a standout that was given to us after one of the early practices. So he's a guy that seems like consistently he's showing up. I think you and I are getting starting to get good at identifying body types, though, because we're learning these different guys. But we did chat with Nick Williams after practice today. Young coach, he's got a lot of passion, and his big thing is I thought his message, and to me, what I got out of it was he's fighting every day to prove himself. I mean, he said that, like, I need to prove myself. This is a very veteran coaching staff, really, except for him. Brett Bartolone is not as experienced as well, but Nick Williams, this is the first time he's in a full-time coaching position. He feels like he's got to prove himself, and I like the energy he brings, and we'll see what he does with that group. But what's your impressions of Nick?
Well, to your point there, I don't know if I've seen a coach that, at least in the way he portrays it to the media, is hungrier than Nick Williams right now. That was very evident, and that's why you need a good mixture of coaches. Mm-hmm. It's great to have a Sal Sanzeri coaching the defensive tackles, and you have kind of the polar opposite in terms of your edge guy, a guy that is going to have a different type of message to the recruits that they go after. So they can kind of tag team it. You've got the real old school coach that's going to swear at you left and right, but he's going to make you a better player, and you're going to know that he cares. And then you've got Nick Williams that also shows that care factor but has that youthful energy to him. So it's a good pairing there. And I even asked him about Upshaw cross-training. He said, that's not how we view it. We're one D-line group, and so you like to hear that from him as well. But I'm sure they're still figuring each other out. I mean, this is only 6 practices, and they didn't have as much time as these other assistant coaches to really form that bond before these spring practices began.
Right, and to me, and the reason why obviously Patrick Hill, was originally the defensive tackles coach, and was here about a minute, and then got a job with the Vikings, and Sal Sunseri comes in. You couldn't get more different in resume, from Patrick Hill to Sal Sunseri, and I think that might be one of the benefits is what Sal can do for Nick Williams. You originally had Patrick and Nick are 2 younger coaches. Now you got Sal Sunseri there, Nick Williams, and he talked about today. He goes, I learned so much from that guy. He goes, he even gets on me all the time. And he goes, I just take it because I know he's helping me as a coach. So I think that might be one of the biggest benefits is what Sal can do for a guy like Nick Williams and these other coaches to help them become better coaches, which then in turn makes better players. But it is interesting. They haven't had that much time together, but Nick apparently Nick Williams loves having Coach Sunseri.
Well, yeah, if you did a blind resume test, and this is no offense to Patrick Hill, who got a great opportunity with the Minnesota Vikings, had a good reputation coming here out of LSU, but 10 out of 10 people would have picked the Sal Sunseri resume coming here. So It was interesting when Patrick Hill announced that he was leaving to the Vikings. I didn't see a lot of panic from the Colorado fan base that generally overreacts to coaching changes, and it's because Coach Prime is the head coach now, and they weren't worried that they were going to get a quality candidate, and you could make a strong argument that they ended up upgrading that position. And again, no offense to Patrick Hill, but it just is the simple fact that Sal Sunseri has coached a lot of football at this point.
Well, I mean, go back 1 year. I mean, the same exact thing happened with Vic So'oto, who was hired here about 6 weeks and then left. And there was panic on that one. Remember, people were really excited about So'oto, and then who'd they bring in? I can't remember the guy that ended up being who ended up being the DC last year. Good coach as well. But I mean, there was more panic with that last year. This year was like, well, let's see what they get. I thought they brought in a good one. The other person we talked to today, Dylan Edwards, the 4-star running back. Originally committed to Notre Dame, flips to CU, and he told a funny story. He said, Coach Prime calls and says, you're coming here, and Dylan says, all right, I'll come for a visit. He goes, no, you're not coming for a visit. You're going to come and play here. And he goes, well, you can't say no to Coach Prime. But I know Buff fans are very excited about Dylan Edwards.
And Dylan Edwards has known Deion Sanders since he was 6 or 7 years old. So a little bit of a different dynamic, clearly. That would be a hard sales pitch to give if you don't know the young man as well as Coach Prime knew Dylan Edwards. But that really made a splash. That in Winston Watkins, a 5-star receiver committing the same day as Coach Prime's intro press conference, that there is sometimes a buzz that the recruiting can build that just starts to create momentum, and then all these other blue chippers, they want to play with other good players. So when it's the cool thing to do, go play for the Buffs for the first time in a really, really long time, they have a chance with these kids that they just wouldn't even have gotten a visit from before. But it was that relationship that Coach Prime had with Dylan Edwards. But he made a play today on 3rd down where he lowered his shoulder to get the extra yardage. And you could see the strength staff losing their minds on the sideline because they're excited. I think that's a challenge that they've had with Dylan Edwards coming in from the high school ranks. His high school film is incredible, among the best high school film I've ever seen, but it's against competition in Kansas. So coming here, there was going to be a steep learning curve, and I think that was a moment that showed the strength staff that he's got a lot of fight in him, and so that was a cool moment today.
Yeah, and for him, he was asked why he wanted to come here early, and it's because he wants to put on that weight and that strength, and so we know he's fast. I mean, he said that he's the fastest guy on the team. He kind of joked about it. Jimmy Horn has said that as well. He said it's not that big of a deal, but I think I'm faster. But he wants to put on that strength as well. He showed it on that run. I know a lot of people are excited about Dylan Edwards. I mean, you look at Jimmy Horn, Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, the weapons on this team and the stars, the recruiting star power on this offense is something we haven't seen around here in a very long time. So,
speaking of Travis Hunter, if we haven't brought up his name once, and he made a couple plays out here today that in previous years we would have focused our whole analysis video on what he does, but it's almost become too easy to point out Travis Hunter at this point, but it's pretty incredible. I actually got in a debate with somebody on a national radio show yesterday. He's an old lineman that he thought it was disrespectful that Colorado would try to play Travis Hunter both ways, and I'm like, I agree if you're talking about 99.9% of college football athletes, but Travis Hunter's the 0.1%. And he looks like Paul Richardson at receiver did early in his career here at Colorado. And Travis Hunter, that's his second position. So that's the type of incredible talent that he is. And it's becoming commonplace already, 2 practices, open practices into this era to just go, ho-hum, there's Travis Hunter with another big play.
Yeah, he made one in front of me, a deep pass that I happened to be standing right there, and he caught it, got 1 foot in bounds, and right along the sidelines, and made a catch for 40, 50-yard pass, and nobody even got super excited about it, but I was like, wow, that's an impressive play. But for Travis, that's it's become commonplace. So you've mentioned before we've got a lot of these practices, so we're gonna save some analysis. We're already 10 minutes in, but a lot of good things happening. It was fun to see practice again. Adam and I will be back here on Thursday.